Poisonous germs, much smaller than a grain of sand, are the most elusive of weapons. The unique case of the disarming of Iraq after the Gulf War provides the world with an example of what it takes to control the weapons of germ warfare. The Gulf War began in 1991 after Iraq had invaded Kuwait. When Allied bombers set out on their missions, Iraq was known to have a considerable arsenal of chemical weapons and powerful missiles with which to deliver them. In addition, a nuclear bomb was a possibility. The Allied forces targeted military sites in Iraq, but Iraq's biological weapons remained an uncharted mystery. The Gulf War was over in less than 2 months. Iraq had been beaten. Its road of retreat from Kuwait was littered with devastation. But nobody knew what damage Iraq, with its weapons of mass destruction, was still able to inflict on its neighbors in the Middle East. This is what the United Nations Security Council set out to uncover as part of the settlement of the Gulf War. A special commission was formed under Swedish diplomat Ralph Akeis. Its awesome mission was to find and eradicate all of Iraq's weapons of mass destruction and to make sure they are not rebuilt. Iraq could not conceal its advanced nuclear weapons program for long. Chemicals to kill were found in barrels and bombshells. The supergun, as tall as a mountain, was no secret in the sand. But biological weapons that start out smaller than a grain of sand were a different matter.
Iraq declared under the resolution that it had no biological program whatsoever and no biological weapons. It admitted some 11 research papers only. However, from our side, from the UN side, we were suspicious because we had some signs, but we had no proof.
In order to search for that proof, the UN teams were authorized to go anywhere and at any time to make surprise visits to civilian and military facilities.
So we need to get that updated too. Don't be shy about opening any door and walking in anywhere, and I don't care who's there.
A nondescript sign directs UN weapons detectives to a mysterious industrial complex out in the desert. Unlike many other key military plants in Iraq, this facility was not bombed by the Allies during the Gulf War, but much about it suggests the production of germ warfare agents.
This is one of our international inspection teams going into Al-Hakam, a site which we have been suspicious about. The team is searching for the biological warfare agents, which are the most threatening, maybe, of all possible weapons of mass destruction we can imagine.
UN inspectors want to know why the production capacity is enormous, yet only insignificant amounts of chicken feed are made here. They suspect the line between civilian and military production was crossed in contempt of international norms.
It clearly is immoral, it is unethical for physicians or scientists to work on the development of biological weapons. Indeed, it's against international law. But there's a dangerous borderline between developing weapons so as to produce defenses against them and developing weapons so that they can be used offensively. And it seems to many of us that physicians and scientists have got to work very hard not to cross over that line, to make certain that their work is not used to produce offensive biological weapons.
Much here points to the possibility that microorganisms were produced to serve offensive military, not benign civilian purposes. The plant's layout is a copy of a facility where Iraq is known to have manufactured chemical weapons. Iraq used chemical bombs against its Kurdish minority and also in its war with Iran. But biological weapons are different. They are made with equipment that lends itself to multiple uses. This is one of the big difficulties in detecting a germ warfare program. All traces of biological weapons agents can be cleaned out of fermenters that have a legitimate use in producing the good things of life.
When you walk into a place like Al-Hakam, all of us were overwhelmed by the possibilities at that site. The Iraqis initially told us that the entire facility was constructed for production of insecticides and animal food supplement, a yeast that was to be used as an animal food supplement. This is the other very big problem in biological warfare control, is that much of the equipment and some of the organisms can be used for more than one purpose, both peaceful, good purposes and harmful purposes.
Although biological weapons are banned, an inspection system to guarantee that they are not produced is only now being hammered out. However, biological weapons are nothing new. They were part of the Cold War arsenal of the big powers. If you know where to look, germ warfare agents are easy to find. For instance, the castor bean is a potential secret weapon. It produces a healthful laxative, but the bean's residue, called ricin, is a very unhealthful substance. Ricin was used in the cloak and dagger days of the Cold War. A Bulgarian dissident, Grigory Markov, broadcast anti-communist messages from London. One day, as this reenactment shows, Markov was prodded in the street with an umbrella, not something that would appear threatening in a rainy city. Markov's wife recalls the undercover attack.
He came home on Thursday night. He was perfectly okay. And by the next day, he was in a critical situation.
When he came home on Thursday night, what did he say about what had happened to him?
He told me the most extraordinary story, that he'd been jabbed with an umbrella tip. It was almost as if he didn't want to believe it himself.
Several days later, Markov was dead. He had been injected with a tiny dose of ricin. Biological weapons are either living microorganisms, such as bacteria or viruses, or they can be the products of these microorganisms, poisons called toxins. The most common biological weapons agent is anthrax. It exists in nature. The spores infect farm animals. Shepherds, veterinarians, and people who work with hides may get a mild form of the disease. But when anthrax spores get into the lungs, they cause a pneumonia which leads rapidly to death. Anthrax makes a very powerful biological weapon. Since the Middle Ages, many organisms derived from nature have been used both to kill individuals and to destroy entire armies. Shakespeare often mentions poisonous potions. A case is documented from the 14th century. In the region of Crimea by the Black Sea, a Tartar army was besieging the fortified city of Kaffa, a European stronghold. After many of the Tartar soldiers had died of the Black Plague, those who were still in good health picked up the bodies of their dead and placed them in hurling machines. The bodies were thrown over the ramparts and into the city. Soon the European defenders of Kaffa began to die of the Black Plague. Those who could fled the infected city and sailed to Europe with the disease. It is believed this was the beginning of the Black Plague in Europe, where it killed some 40 million people. In the 20th century, potent biological weapons started to be produced in laboratories. They're among the weapons of mass destruction the United Nations has struggled to outlaw.
Many countries had expressed an interest and a desire to ban specifically biological weapons. The impetus for that came about when President Nixon in November of 1969 unilaterally renounced biological warfare and started the dismantlement of the U.S. biological warfare program. This decision was based on recommendation of his military advisors that biological weapons probably had no real significant utilization in modern warfare.
The contributions that have been made by the British government, by the Soviet government, by the government of the United States and others concerned would not have been possible except for those working for arms control in each of our countries.
The treaty to ban offensive biological weapons was weak, since measures to enforce it were not included. Later, advances in biotechnology undermined the treaty further. A terrorist attack with chemical weapons in Tokyo also sounds a warning about biological weapons. Bags of the nerve gas sarin hit rush hour riders in the Tokyo subway system. Some 100 countries and an unknown number of terrorist organizations can access the kind of dual-use technology it takes to make biological weapons. A laboratory anywhere in the world can acquire virus or bacteriocide culture, often by mail order.
The amount contained in one small vial like this is sufficient to begin a culture that could eventually be propagated into very large quantities. That's all that's required to start the production of any biological agent is a small amount like this. So it's like looking for a needle in a haystack in some respects.
Today, a UN biological team has entered a hot zone at a legitimate vaccine factory in Baghdad. They want to know what was grown in the flasks in the past and might be grown in the future.
This is very common for the production of bacterial-based vaccines at Al-Kindi. They do their fermentations, as you can see, in 10-liter flasks. And although this is rather labor-intensive, it seems to be rather effective in producing large quantities of vaccine.
The investigators are aware of the dangerous potential for deception. Germs made to kill and medicines made to heal can be cultivated in the very same containers. Only a very fine line separates the one from the other. Here, bioweapons experts want to find out what laboratory animals are used. Some animals lend themselves better than others to experimentation with weapons-grade substances. Team members venture deeper into the hot zone. Virtually any civilian vaccine factory can quickly be converted into a biological weapons plant. The equipment that today produces vaccines to promote public health can tomorrow be switched to produce death and disease on a massive scale. All it takes to start the lethal business is one small vial of bacteria, viruses, or toxins. In an isolated section of the plant, the inspectors come across a single stray vial.
So you say it's Gamboro? Gamboro, I think, yeah.
Does the vial really contain just Gamboro, a chicken vaccine as the label says, or does it enclose a lethal culture from a biological warfare program? The bio team brings the vial and all the other clues collected that day to the Special Commission's headquarters in Baghdad. Highly specialized analysts sift through everything. They conclude that the suspicious substance was indeed a harmless chicken vaccine. UN inspectors found numerous cages for a wide variety of animals at sites that were suspected of having participated in biological warfare production. Cages to house small animals in field tests were evidence that biological weapons agents had been tested using explosive devices.
We saw insect cages. What were they doing with these insect cages? Insects can be used as vectors of disease, a means of transmitting disease.
Not such a far-fetched possibility in the annals of germ warfare. During the Second World War, for instance, Japan dropped bombs filled with plague-infected fleas on several cities in China. Growth media is the food in which bacteria grow and multiply. It is mainly used for clinical diagnostic purposes. At a large hospital in the West, a 6-month supply of media fits on the desk. It is measured out in milligrams.
We had reliable information that media has been imported to Iraq in large quantities. And this media we wanted to find. Iraq couldn't account for 17 tons which were missing, and so Iraq stated that these media had been lost in riots. So we pressed them further, and finally on 1st of July in 1995, Iraq admitted, yes, indeed, these 17 tons have been used for the offensive biological program.
After Iraq admitted to full-scale production of biological weapons agents, a startling picture emerged. The facility at Al-Hakam had cultivated huge amounts of many deadly biological materials in these fermenters. A freeze-dried seed culture dropped into a laboratory flask of growth media fills it within a few hours. Computer-controlled fermenters full of nutrients then provide an even temperature and a constant flow in which the bacteria multiply further. In a matter of days, the tiny seed has yielded enough biological warfare agent to fill up weapons shells. These vats grew 8,000 liters of anthrax bacteria, a substance so lethal that 1/100th of a millionth of a gram is enough to kill. Al-Hakam also produced 19,000 liters of concentrated botulinum toxin, an extremely powerful poison. Iraq admitted to having produced ricin, the killer substance used during the Cold War, as well as many other microorganisms that infect with illness.
You don't produce a large amount of very sensitive, dangerous warfare agents just to put them into the fridge or put them into various sorts of drums where they can leak and create enormous havoc. You need to link it up to something else.
Hard evidence of the link-up was pulled out of the waters of the Euphrates River. Thanks to a tip-off from a local farmer, bombshells altered to contain biological agents were found. How they came to be dumped here, no one was telling.
These bombs are R400 bombs. This is the body section and this is the nose cone with the burster tube. For the biological program, they modified this bomb to an R400A bomb, which means they have here an epoxy lining outside the burster tube, which is a blue-colored paint and would prevent the biological agent from deteriorating.
The discovery of the bombshells revealed what hitherto had been unknown. According to Iraq, during the Gulf War, 200 biological bombs were delivered to Iraqi troops for use in case of a nuclear attack by the Allies. It's believed, however, that none of these biological weapons was used. If they had been, the scenario in a densely populated urban area would have been something like this. On a clear, cool night, an anthrax bomb explodes in the skies above an urban area. The released plume of powder covers a zone a mile long and leaves 100,000 people dead. A biological bomb can kill as many as an equivalent-size nuclear weapon.
It is directed against the people, against every man, woman, and children. And of course, the weaker die first, but fundamentally, everyone inhaling these, dried anthrax is doomed. It is a terrible death and a very dangerous weapon.
Work continues at a plant where authorized short-range missiles are serviced. But Iraqi metal workers were trained to work on some very sophisticated long-range missiles, too.
Iraqis received from the Soviet Union about 800 ballistic missiles of the type Scud B with a range of 300 kilometers, and they have modified the range of these missiles to 650 kilometers, and they called this missile Al-Hussein. The modification was very easy and very quick. It was a kind of quick and dirty solution. They extended the volume of the tanks, so they extended the amount of propellant, and they reduced the volume and the weight of the warhead. You see here the small tip is the new warhead, the big black one is the old warhead. If they would have used biological warheads, then if the warhead would have been placed properly in the vicinity of a highly populated area, each of the Al-Hussein missile warheads would have probably cost about 10,000 lives.
The only reliable way to prevent re-emergence of biological warfare agents in Iraq is to destroy that facility. And not only the production capability, but everything else, research and development, laboratories, storage facilities, and animal houses. All these are part of a total package of production. And therefore, one must be very thorough and very decisive.
Everything at Al-Hakam, where Iraq produced its biological weapons agents, has to be destroyed. Iraq spent approximately $10 million to produce a very lethal arsenal of biological weapons. Its nuclear efforts cost as much as $10 billion, and no bomb got made. The low cost of the germ warfare program makes it a bargain basement way to end life on Earth. All the more reason to tighten the biological weapons convention. Only under very special circumstances could the ban on biological weapons be enforced in Iraq. Now international acceptance of such enforcement measures is necessary to strengthen the treaty against germ warfare. While Al-Hakam is being destroyed, another laboratory with similar equipment stays active. UN inspectors visit it as part of their routine monitoring to make sure Iraq does not resume biological weapon production. Such intrusive inspections are mapping out a model for future worldwide control of biological weapons.
The way to handle such a situation is to establish a system of verification, which doesn't exist in the present Biological Weapons Convention framework. But we in the Commission have been forced to develop a system. So we have worked ourselves through this problem and tested various methods and means. Some have been discarded, but others have been shown a lot of promise, and we feel that we can make a further contribution outside the context of monitoring Iraq.
This is the first time ever that a biological weapons facility is being dismantled under international supervision.
Today we've got about 5 tons of media that are scheduled to be destroyed. With this quantity of media, you could grow quite a large amount of bacterial culture. You can grow enough culture to easily supply a BW weapons program.
Because of its defeat in the Gulf War, Iraq was forced to allow inspectors to roam its country. But many countries object to intrusive searches. Open doors are called for at the UN Disarmament Conference in Geneva. A verification system is being negotiated there to make sure that those who have signed the treaty against biological weapons adhere to it. But can a biological arms race be stopped?
I think that the proliferation of biological weapons can be slowed. I don't think it can be prevented if there is a determination by a proliferant country.
It's very difficult to control because all of the biological agents are also involved in vaccine production, in food processing, and hospitals and so on.
So what we really need to do is focus on the technology that allows you to make these into effective weapons. And I believe if we do that, and by international pressure on countries that would dare to participate in the weaponization of these agents, we can probably effectively control the weaponization aspect. So on that side, I'm very optimistic.
In recent time, we have had some considerable success, and we are optimistic that we can make further contribution to the international work on strengthening the biological warfare weapons convention.
With its unique mandate, the United Nations unearthed Iraq's secret biological weapons program. Under the supervision of international demolition experts, preparations are made to blow up the last of the 60 buildings at Al-Hakam, Iraq's main germ warfare center. In this case, a long fuse and explosives show countries and terrorists who might contemplate biological weapons that the international community will not tolerate their production.